Well, my dear Jem, in the wise words of Zangief from Wreck-It Ralph, just because you bad guy does not mean you bad guy.
I cannot wait for the next Wreck-It Ralph movie.
However, sometimes bad guys are bad at being bad guys. Does that mean they're actually bad guys?
The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem. G'day and welcome to The Gaming Lovers episode number 11.
Legs 11.
Yes.
That's what they say in bingo. That's a game.
G'day, I'm Jem.
I'm Brendo.
And later on in today's episode, we're going to be talking about video game villains who really should quit their day job or find a new hobby.
We're talking about the worst villains in video games, but not like if you have a list of the best villains, they're like, oh, these ones are incredible. We're not talking about villains that are lackluster or badly designed. We're talking about ones that just plain fail.
Repeatedly. We'll be talking about that very soon. But first, our gaming goals.
I love this part.
Yeah?
Because I get to brag about all my gaming success on this platform.
Have you had much this week?
I have indeed.
Oh.
I have been playing Prey.
Mm-hmm.
I said that very slowly, so I wouldn't say that I was praying play. Prey. Now, I don't understand why they had to brand this game as Prey. There was a game, I think in about 2006 that came out. It was a shooter called Prey. And for whatever reason, they made this amazing game in 2017 and decided to tack the name Prey on it. It could have been named anything because it has no real links to the other Prey game.
Sometimes linking onto a name, though, can just help sell because you have old fans that are looking for the next thing in a series. So it's automatically got a fan base kind of built in. So there's some logic to it. It might not be perfect, though, because if it's nothing like its predecessors, then it could be a bit of a backlash or end up hurting the game overall.
Yeah, the Prey in 2006 era was more of just a generic shooter in a spaceship. Aliens have abducted you. Congratulations. It also had, just like the game Portal, it had a lot of Portal-style technology, which was a real brain-melting experience when that was still new on the gaming scene. This new Prey game, however, I didn't get a chance to get around to it last year when it came out, and I'm actually quite astonished that it didn't get more attention. It was fantastic. Now, I have a large, like American fast food large size backlog.
Well, that's large.
So I'm trying to blow through my games pretty much as quick as possible. I'll go from start to finish. I'll do some side quests here and there. I might pop a trophy here and there, but I'm focusing on getting through it, seeing those end credits. Next, let's move on. I checked out howlongtobeat.com for an estimation of how long this game would take. And it said main story, about 15 and a half hours. I spent almost 30 hours in this game, and I loved it. I loved searching through everybody's emails. I loved connecting the dots on the plot. I wasn't planning on doing many of the side quests, and I ended up doing pretty much everything that was available to me. I was invested in the characters, even the ones that were just a headless corpse on the floor. I got legitimately startled by some of the spooky parts of the game.
Or when I walk in abruptly and you just nearly wet your pants.
The disadvantage of an invisible enemy being in a room and I can hear things and then the door bursts open and my wife goes, "Hi, what do you want for dinner?" That's like the Jack-in-the-Box trick.
It's like that, wasn't it last week we were talking about that dad that was streaming and his little girl startled him while he was playing a horror game?
Yeah, well, you have done that to me on occasion too. One thing, I'm not going to go on too long about Prey, but there's just one aspect of it because it is set in a space station and the way you get around is either by directly going from one area to another, taking a giant lift from one end of the ship to the other, or spacewalking on the outside with a jetpack. I cannot recall the last time I felt so vulnerable in a game as when I'm free floating through space with alien creatures hot on my tail and I'm hurtling and the physics are right. You boost in a direction, you can't just turn on a dime. You keep going in that direction. You can hit your brakes, but then the thing behind you is probably going to have a little munch on your feet. But just the 360-degree movement, everything's sort of slowly rotating. You feel disorientated at times, thinking, I've just gone back to the same door I came out of. Where am I going? It was great. Yeah. I'm blown away as to how good it was. The only negative, the loading times were quite long. I could pretty much load up a new area, head off, turn the kettle on, boil, there you go, pour a coffee, stir it, wait till it cools down. It's now too cool to drink. Now it's just that ugly sort of tepid coffee. Oh, and the level's finally loaded. Excellent. It's not quite that bad, but you get my exaggerated example.
I understand the hyperbole, yes.
The hyperbole, as they say.
No. Not how you say it. It's how you spell it. That's not how you say it.
Now, I have mentioned I have a large backlog and I like to knock these games out in quick succession. I'm very tempted to start up a completely fresh run of Prey.
Really?
That in itself should tell you how much I enjoyed it.
You're going to do a gem.
I was thinking about this game, and not like Phoenix Wright, for example. Phoenix Wright's the sort of game where I think about it when I'm not playing it because I'm trying to connect the dots. I'm trying to piece together the evidence. This game, I was just thinking about, oh man, this game's so good. This game's so fun. I'm having such a good time with this game. So it's just consumed me. But I beat it. It's ticked off. I have played Prey, and it is a front runner for the top game that I've played this year.
Wow.
Yeah, sorry. I've ranted and raved for about 5 minutes now.
That's all right. We've got 5 minutes left for the rest of our podcast night.
But hey, that's pretty much all I have played. Yakuza 4, still about 60% through that. That's just taken a slight break while I drooled all over Prey. I'm now paranoid anytime two objects of similar appearance are next to each other anywhere in my house.
So going to do that. I'm just going to put two identical coffee mugs. Like you'll have one out with coffee that you put ready, and then I'll just quickly make one in the same style mug and put it next to it.
I will test it with a wrench.
Oh, that would be really funny.
So that is my gaming update. What have you been up to? And should I ask the question that's surely on everyone's lips? Have you beaten Legend of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel 2 yet?
Oh my goodness, I hate this. I don't hate it, but I hate that it won't end. Oh my goodness, just end. Please. Okay, look, without going into too much spoilers, there's this like little side annex story that they've shoehorned in. I don't know if it's DLC or something, but it is completely different characters than any of the other characters that have been playing the entire game, that they've just introduced randomly and just said, hey, you're going to play a whole chapter as these guys, and you have to do a whole other big dungeon with these guys, and you don't know how they work, you don't understand what their strengths and weaknesses are, you don't even really know much of their backstory. They allude to all these other characters and talk about people that are in their lives, and you don't care because you don't know them because you haven't spent 2 days or 2 games playing as these characters. No,
Please
but you're supposed to get... No. You were supposed to be instantly connected with them and care about why you're playing as them. No, can't I just skip this chapter and go to the next bit because I was this close to finishing the game? Okay, rant over.
Boy, I thought my rant was long.
Well, mine was long, but I was just, Gilmore Girls pace.
You got through the quote-unquote final dungeon, which was an arduous journey in itself. You went through the gauntlet of about 5 boss battles in a row. A music video plays with lovely images of all the characters, and you think, that's it, I'm done. And then, 3 months later.
I was expecting like an epilogue where you kind of maybe get to just do one like little fluffy stuff at the end. But no, we're going to do all this stuff. And you'd be like, what are you doing to me, game? I was so ready to finish this game and move on with my life.
It's funny you say that because I think there is definitely material worth digging as far as a podcast topic for the future. Games that are either too long or too short and just fall out of that perfect sweet spot.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. But anyway, I...
Tune in next week when Jem still hasn't beaten Trails of Cold Steel 2.
This game will never end. Okay, but on a side note, The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit came out this week, and my goodness, it's free. It's like 2 hours long, and it is so sweet and heartbreaking, and I don't want to say anything more about the story or the game.
Have you enjoyed it?
Well, I enjoyed Life is Strange, so I think if you played that and you enjoyed it, you will enjoy this too. Very similar style, naturally, because it's the same creators.
And it's free.
It's free!
That's 2 thumbs up.
And it's... but I'm just an emotional person. I cry really easy. So things like stories with like this kind of stuff really hit me. So just be prepared for the feels is all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Bit of a gut punch.
As long as you keep your expectations in check, from what I've seen, I'm yet to get through it. But, it's basically a teaser. It's just them showing a little side story.
Yeah.
To
feed into Life is Strange 2, basically. Mm-hmm. So if you have played the first Life is Strange, then why wouldn't you? I imagine most people who have already then played this. But if you haven't, I mean, it's free. So it's a great place to kind of introduce you to that world without, massive spoilers on either side. So,
and it is definitely a little bit different to a Life is Strange as well. It might be just a good little sampler. Mm-hmm. For also anyone who hasn't played one of those sort of interactive narrative style of video game before.
Yeah.
And it's free. Have we mentioned that it's free?
Yeah. It's interesting to note, I think more narrative video games are actually coming out of the woodwork. It used to be really rare. Like, we would always point to Heavy Rain, like those David Cage games that were just in their own little bubble, and a lot of gamers would be like, ugh, an interactive movie, that's not video games. But then Telltale had such success with The Walking Dead, which is really very, very similar. Mm-hmm. And then with Life is Strange, all of those interactive stories, I think more and more of them are coming out, and I think are being accepted. So I'm interested to see where that goes down the future. It's
kind of funny. A lot of people don't realise that Telltale had a long history of those sort of games before The Walking Dead. But The Walking Dead was their big, this is incredible, well done Telltale games.
They capitalised on the TV series being huge too. I think the timing definitely helped.
That doesn't hurt.
And incredible writing, incredible cast. Like, they just ticked all the boxes. So that and The Wolf Among Us, like, they just had a lot of success in succession, I guess.
Yeah, and then they sort of hit that Lego video game mode where they just started pumping out too many games that we couldn't keep up with. So there are some gaps in our experiences with them, but here we are talking about Telltale games during the introduction to our gaming goals. What are we doing? We've gone off the tracks.
Well, we'll get back to what new gaming goals we'll have at the end of the podcast. I think it's time for us to jump into our topic for episode 11, video game villains that really need a new hobby or job.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side, and you could be featured in the next podcast.
Sometimes you might pick up the guitar and say, you know what, I'd like to learn guitar. And you try it, and sometimes you're a natural, and sometimes you really just have to practice and work at it, and you will get there. And sometimes you have a finger that doesn't bend right because it got hit with a hammer, and it's just not going to happen, okay? Mm-hmm. It's just, I'm not going to be able to play the guitar. Look, I accept that. What were we talking about? Oh, right, it was my analogy. Yeah, some villains, they are despicable. Mm-hmm. They succeed. They blow up the world. They steal all the gold.
Sometimes they win. Sometimes the video game ends by you losing, by you dying, or you become the villain. You know, there's a lot of video games that have pretty harsh endings, really. But there are some tend to be more on the kiddish side, I would say, that really lean towards like the villains that keep attempting and then keep failing at taking over the world. It's like, gee, brain, what do you want to do tonight? The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world!
And they do say that if you do not succeed at something, you should try and try and try again.
Isn't that also like the definition of insanity, is trying the exact same thing the same way and expecting a different result?
Well, that's just it. These villains, either they have such a goofy scheme that it's never going to work, or it's completely self-defeating, or they just have not learnt their lesson and they really should try and maybe find a career change.
That's like Dr. Doofenshmirtz in Phineas and Ferb.
Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated.
The poor guy tries to take over the tri-state area. He's not even going for the world.
He has much smaller aspirations and still can't succeed. But yeah, in any media, there's examples of this in TV shows. There's examples of this in cartoons. There's examples in movies. But we're talking about video game villains.
Well, technically, Dr. Doofenshmirtz could classify as a video game villain. Because there is a Phineas and Ferb game. I believe it's on the DS.
I've played it.
Yes. So I think that kind of counts as a check, maybe as an honourable mention.
Can I just say, it was a little bit outside of my age bracket.
I bet.
I've actually played 2 Phineas and Ferb games.
Oh, really? There's been more than one.
Not only was there one that I bought on the PlayStation Vita, but I actually had now this is the catch, a 6-year-old say to me, "You like Phineas and Ferb? You can borrow my DS game."
Oh, that's so cute.
And I felt obliged to play it to its completion. So I did.
Oh, dear. So there are quite a few classics on our list, but we'll kind of work our way up to the obvious ones, I think, as far as video game villains who tend to fail a lot. One of my favourites is from Portal 2, Wheatley.
Yes, good old Wheatley, who has to be one of the most charming, bumbling idiots.
Yes.
But he's an AI. And how can an AI be bumbling? You think that, especially when they're cast as a villain, that sort of, it's programmed to think of every possible outcome. It knows exactly what you're going to do, and it will prevent you using cold, lethal logic. I mean, it is emotionless. It has you figured out, and then there's Wheatley.
I would have to say, though, all the villains in Portal are so incredibly well written and acted. They are 90% of the reason to play those games. The puzzles are great and fun, but even if you've, mastered them all, it's still just such a joy to listen to the banter, the clever dialogue, and again, one of our favourite villains in GLaDOS, but she's a good villain in the sense of she's quite successful in her undertakings. Wheatley, on the other hand, is a bit of a doofus, a bit of a klutz. Could you say klutz? Does that work with a robot?
He is a clumsy orb.
Yes. And voiced beautifully by the British comedian Stephen Merchant, which I think adds to that so much.
I think to truly get your head around how bad of a villain, how unsuccessful, I will say, as a villain that Wheatley is, you have to contrast him with GLaDOS. She sets up test chambers that will make you pull your hair out to get through, and she's taunting you the whole time. Wheatley will build a test chamber and forget to put one of the walls on properly, and you can just walk around it. And then he'll crack a tanty that, no, that's not how it's supposed to be done.
Exactly. How dare you use this obvious loophole? It's so amusing, and even if you haven't played the game or have no desire to play it, I would recommend watching a playthrough of someone else just to enjoy the dialogue, because oh my goodness, it's easily some of the most memorable video game characters ever.
Yes. He does start off quite friendly, but power goes to his head, and it really shouldn't have. He's not fit for that role. He needs a career reassessment, I think.
Yes, a bit of a hard reboot to the brain, to the programming.
Now, when I think evil corporations,
Mm-hmm.
Resident Evil has its Umbrella Corporation.
Yes.
The elusive man in Mass Effect has Cerberus. There are some strong opposition you experience in games from evil corporations.
Yeah.
And yet, in the Pokemon series, they fall into one of two categories. Either they have some sort of bizarre aspiration to destroy all land or all water because they only like one or the other, thanks Team Magma and Team Aqua, or they want to, what was it in Pokemon Diamond, like erase the world of emotion, or I don't know, some of these Pokemon plots get weird.
What's Pokemon?
However, they have one slight weakness, and that is that they can be easily thwarted by a single teenager and their small army of creature slaves.
Mm-hmm. Well, there tends to be quite a common theme in a lot of Japanese RPGs, is that you're playing as a teenager or a little kid that saves the world.
All the way from Pokemon Red and Blue and Yellow with Team Rocket, we've had so many different incarnations. Every Pokemon game, what's the team going to be?
Yeah.
It's Team Rocket. It's Team Galactic. It's Team this. It's Team that. And they all have their chain of hierarchy, and you work your way through, and we'll send this lieutenant to stop this little interfering brat, and it never works. And then you defeat the big head of the corporation, and yay, we saved the galaxy. Congratulations.
So would you say that all the teams in all the Pokemon games pretty much belong on this list, or is there one in particular?
No, they pretty much all deserve to be on there purely because of how easily they seem to be taken down by a single thorn. However, I will give a special mention to my boys, boom chicka boom chicka boom chicka, Team Skull. In Pokemon Moon, which I have been replaying as well, here and there, as breaks will allow me to, they don't really seem to have a grand plan like the others do. They're a bunch of rebellious youths who stand there and hey man, you can't do this to us. And they're dancing with these weird moves. They use the same pathetic Pokemon that every other villain has in Pokemon history. They'll throw out a Zubat.
So what you're saying is they belong in a gang in West Side Story, but with Pokemon.
That's actually a pretty good illustration there.
Do they walk up and click?
They don't particularly click, but they will throw their hands around like they're cool guys dancing.
Yeah, man.
And they have no purpose and no grand plan. So I don't actually know which one's worse. To have this big aspiring plan that's easily defeated, like all the other teams, or to just be, hey, we're thugs and we're cool and we're the antagonists in this game. We're not good enough to be proper Pokemon trainers, so we're just going to annoy and steal other people's stuff.
Well, at least their mission statement is more realistic, rather than trying to destroy all of the water or all the land. They're just trying to annoy people, which is a far more realistic goal. If anything, they're probably more successful than any other team in Pokemon then, in that sense. If their whole mission statement is to annoy people, then job done.
Well, you've just blown my mind.
I completely flipped your logic back on you.
Didn't expect that, to be honest.
I still always loved Team Rocket, especially Jessie and James. I'm an original, Kanto region Pokemon girl myself.
Well, if we're talking about the worst villains in any media's history, surely Jessie, James, and Meowth have to be among the peak, because how many episodes of Pokemon are there? And every episode they have a plan, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say 98% of the time they fail.
Booted.
So
they get Team Rocket is blasting off again. Wow, and sometimes, if they appear at the very beginning of the episode and then they get booted out, you know that they did it just so they could get that out of the way and focus on the rest of the story. The poor guys.
They are not the focus this episode. Let's have their plan thwarted in the first 60 seconds and then their obligation done.
Oh, we got a little sidetracked there. Speaking of kind of Japanese things of like Japanese culture and gaming. Jet Set Radio.
Japanese culture and gaming pretty much sums up our taste in games a lot of the times.
Well, to be fair, they actually cover majority of gaming, I would say. Like, you have a lot that comes from North America and Canada, but then Japan makes up the bulk of what we play. Like Nintendo, pretty much my childhood, all from Japan. Not that I realized that at the time, but anyway.
Yeah, I also get this a lot from workmates, people who outside of my friends group don't know what my tastes are in gaming, but they know I play games. So I'll be playing something on my PS Vita and they'll walk past and go, "Hey, what are you playing?" And I'll go, "Hyperdimension Neptunia Mark II." And they're like, "That's not Call of Duty. I have no idea what that is." So I have experienced this. And when closer to the start of our relationship and you were starting to ask me what sort of games I liked, and you saw me playing a game where you play as a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? It's ticking that Japanese box again. A teenager who just goes around graffitiing.
Mm-hmm.
Jet Set Radio, also known as Jet Grind Radio in certain territories. And suddenly, what is trying to stop me from doing my minor act of vandalism? It's a helicopter shooting rockets at me.
It's just slightly extreme reaction to graffiti.
In the first Jet Set Radio game, Captain Onishima, he starts off as just your typical, he's like a perfect cartoon detective. He's got his trench coat, he's got his slick hair, he's got his big revolver, and he's been tasked with trying to stop the GGs, which is the name of the gang, from tagging Tokyo.
I wonder if Banksy ever played Jet Set Radio as a kid. It would explain a lot.
So they start off a couple of, standard issue policemen with their batons run up and go, "Hut, hut, hut, hut," and try to, beat you into submission, which is pretty standard from my experience of vandalism. No, I'm actually a good boy.
I'm going to let that one drop. Yep.
And then as the game progresses and this police captain gets more and more determined to stop you, we have tanks rolling through the streets of Tokyo shooting at these teenagers on their rollerblades. We have helicopters. We have giant mechs in one of the sequel. He literally comes along with this giant spider mech to try to crush you into a cel-shaded paste. And, of course, like so many villains on this list, he continues to fail at every opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But if you consider the fact it probably would have cost the city a couple $100 to clean up all this graffiti, and he's just caused tens of thousands of dollars worth, or yen. Okay, we'll make it yen. Hundreds of thousands of yen worth of damage.
I'd say millions of yen worth of damage if he's using rockets.
Well,
how does he not destroy the buildings when he misses?
Well, it leads to the age-old question. What is more destructive, paint or...
firepower?
Yeah, missiles.
I think we know the answer.
So that is why I give my buddy, as I absolutely adore the Jet Set Radio series, I think there should be another one, already made. That we have not got a new Jet Set Radio since the start of the original Xbox.
Share the love. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaming Lovers.
One that came to mind for me because we recently played Mario Tennis is Waluigi.
Waluigi, whose very existence seems to be somewhat pointless.
Yes. Poor
Now,
guy.
for those who...
Poor lanky guy.
Those of maybe the more casual sense know that there's Mario and there's Luigi. And then for some reason they needed a sort of evil version of Mario, so they made Wario for the back in the old Game Boy era. And the NES had Wario's Woods, some truly classic gems there. But Wario did sort of spin off to his own games. He had WarioWare Smooth Moves.
Yes.
He's had treasure hunting games. He loves his money. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
And then just to balance the
scale?
The mirror image, I guess, we had Waluigi appear as well. Mario's red, Luigi's green, Wario's yellow, and Waluigi is purple, and that's basically it.
They're like the Wiggles.
Wario's had games. He's been an antagonist in some games.
Yep.
Waluigi is just...
He's just an antagonist in, like, party games.
He's just there to play golf or to hang around and play tennis. And for whatever reason, everyone is up in arms at the moment when Smash Brothers was announced and, this character's going to be in it, this character's going to be in it. And everyone's like, yes, this is Waluigi's moment.
Wah, 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 wah.
Luigi.
No Waluigi.
But he makes this list based purely on his apparent uselessness to the very media that he's been created for.
Yes. Well, he's not even been given the chance to even try to be a villain, really. I mean, the most that he shows any villainous personality traits in these games is that, A, he associates with Wario, like they always kind of appear as a duo, and that he has an evil cackle, like he is kind of.
I'm pretty sure I've seen him graffiti a poster of Mario and Luigi before as well.
And apparently that makes you worthy of being villainous.
Depends on your opinion on graffiti. Is it art? Is it not art?
Well, I know it's definitely frowned upon in Japan, so I guess that makes you worthy of villainous status by graffitiing something.
I used to get horrified looks from people because back when I studied art in school, I liked good graffiti. I thought it looked cool. Didn't like the vandalism aspect of it.
No.
And I absolutely despise useless tags. But when done well, graffiti is beautiful.
Yeah. Again, Banksy. I mean, Melbourne, the city in which we live, is quite famous for its graffitied laneways where, people will come from around the world to put up temporary art, really. But even celebrities will come and get their picture taken with ones that have been done of them. Like Jerry Seinfeld when he was in Melbourne last, there had been a big floor to ceiling or wall, roof to ceiling, I should say, portrait.
Roof to ceiling? That's not very far. Most houses, that's only centimetres.
Floor to roof.
Of a multi-story building?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Graffitied portrait of him.
It's hard to get the
Giant
scale.
One, which makes me wonder, do they have scaffolding when they're doing this? But yes, we definitely celebrate good graffiti in Melbourne.
Well, tune in next week on the Graffiti Lovers podcast, because that is where we've ended up.
Share the love. Follow us on Twitter at Brendo and Jem. That's BRENDOJEM.
All right, there was a villain that I thought was the bee's knees. I thought this guy was the coolest. He's just one of those villains that I always respected and thought he was great in the media. And, hey, it's a minor spoiler, but it's a game that's over 2 decades old at this point. Resident Evil 1. Your captain, Albert Wesker, turns out to be a scoundrel. And since he's a recurring villain, that's not really spoiler territory anymore.
Do bees actually have knees?
Oh, I'm sure they do. They have legs with a bend.
Do they?
I'm sure it's a functioning knee.
I guess I don't really look at them close enough for that.
All right, we've got to Google this. This is a really good question, and in fact, they do. There we go. Problem solved.
Bees have segmented legs consisting of parts called a coax, a trochnecker? What is that word?
A trochnecker. Oh boy.
A femur, a tibia, and a tarsus.
No, a tarsus. Don't tarsus me. All right, please stop. We can get back on focus now.
Other villains. Okay, so bees do have knees. Who is the bee's knees? Albert Wesker.
So, Albert Wesker, who has brought your Special Forces unit into this mansion to fight the zombie outbreak that has occurred in these labs, to test the viability of these bioweapons, if they can be sold as weapons overseas for money. After all said and done, of course, the heroes prevail, make it through to the final big boss who's in a tank. He's this giant mutant, and Albert Wesker's plan to get away with it all after he's been revealed is to get stabbed in the chest with giant claws.
As you do.
That's not exactly the best final touch to the plan. He's lured people here. He's executed everything. Everyone's fighting things. It's wonderful. The plan's going well. Either the STARS units succeed, in which case he looks like a hero, or they get killed, which means, hey, these bioweapons are good against living soldiers. Let's sell them for money. And he then, in typical villain fashion, can't help but reveal the fact that he's a traitor. So he takes them to the big bioweapon, the Tyrant, and Wesker's plan is to fake his own death so that he can escape with the vital information and he'll be a rich man. Unfortunately, his plan to fake his death is to be stabbed through the chest multiple times by the Tyrant's, 9-inch claws, and that is his master plan.
Not the brightest plan.
Now, he does inject himself with a virus strain that gives him super healing and stuff, so I guess he did think it through a little bit, but it's kind of embarrassing when your big villain gets stabbed by something that's supposedly just a puppet.
You think you would choose to be stabbed in a non-fatal area?
Yeah, stab my leg.
Or find a part of the chest that looks like it's near the heart but not actually near any vital organs.
No, I don't think you understand. The Tyrant has 5 gigantic claws. They all go through his torso.
Oh.
And that's his plan. I know, I'll just rupture my spleen, my kidney, my lung, my heart, my pancreas.
Is he a Krogan? Does he have multiple organs?
No.
No?
Just your...
So no redundant organs ready to kick in if one fails?
No, but he does get cat eyes after taking his virus needle.
Okay.
Yellow cat eyes.
As you do.
Meow. Albert Wesker.
Oh my goodness. All right. Pièce de résistance. The two, probably two of the most iconic video game villains ever, also pretty much suck at their jobs. They're kind of in the same boat, but on opposite teams as far as branding goes. Mm-hmm. So you have, on one side, Dr. Eggman from Sonic.
Also known as Dr. Robotnik,
yes,
if you want to go classic.
Mm-hmm. Versus Bowser from every Mario game ever.
Now, it may seem obvious, but why would you say that these two take the crown, the shared crown, of being the worst, least successful video game villains of all time?
They're very similar in a lot of ways. They both have minions at their disposal. They both have one major arch rival that they're constantly trying to defeat and fail miserably every time. They're iconic. They've been around for many, many years, and because they're such a staple of gaming for their respective teams, I guess, that they've reached that status that they have. That's why, even though Bowser sucks at his job, he may be able to, kidnap Princess Peach, but he can never hold on to her for very long.
I wouldn't really even call it a job. It's more just like a hobby or a pursuit.
It's a bit like that.
But yes, poor Bowser does capture Princess. Mario defeats Bowser. Princess is free. Mm-hmm. And then we rinse and repeat on the next game.
I have so many questions as far as it comes with Bowser. They've introduced all of, his kids, right? Who's their mother?
Yeah, we don't want to delve down that rabbit hole. That is just too confusing. Is
it because they all look like Bowser? There is no
We're yet to see a mother Bowser.
Yeah. But there's no humanoid.
No.
The theories that might suggest that a certain princess is the mother.
My goodness.
I would say would fall flat because they don't share any of her traits. Just saying. We're really sidetracked.
No, I don't like the way this episode has been put together. We're all over the place. Can I bring it back to Sonic?
I was just going to say, we're taking after the villains that we're talking about.
And what, being bad at our job?
Oh.
All right, let me go back into my wheelhouse.
Yep.
For the simplistic sake, I will call him Dr. Eggman because that is what he's named these days. That was his original Japanese name, by the way.
Oh, there you go.
Now, unlike Bowser, who basically just shows up in a flying ship and just scoops up the princess and escapes to whatever castle he has, Eggman has built, at this point, probably hundreds of different robots and gigantic mechanical things
He's quite an inventor.
to try and stop Sonic.
He's actually very smart in some ways, just doesn't seem to know how to apply it correctly, because some of the robots he comes up with are clever and I think could have better use or better application elsewhere. So he could have a bright future if he wasn't so dead set on getting rid of Sonic.
It's just, it gets to the point of ridiculousness when he shows up with a wrecking ball and goes, "Ha, this'll work." And then, nope, oh, he's been destroyed.
Like Wile E. Coyote.
Yes, he's always got that plan, that next plan. This one'll work, I promise you. Whether it's
Anvil on the head. Boom.
the giant death egg robot, whether it is the classic of the little Eggmobile. I love that Eggmobile design. It's just like this little ball that he sits in. It's wonderful.
Oh, it reminds me, isn't there like meringue mix or something that comes in an egg? Pavlova mix.
Oh, yes.
Here in Australia, we have this, it's a dessert called Pavlova, and it's
In a giant
very
plastic
sugary.
egg.
Yeah, it comes in a plastic egg, and it so looks like the Eggmobile.
I might have to get one to paint it.
You could create like a little toy, get like a small plushie of Eggman and get him to sit inside. It would be awesome.
Now, what
Okay.
this reminds me of is this is not complex, okay? With the anime series Assassination Classroom, they have to put together this incredibly complex plan to even have a slight chance of eliminating their target.
Yes.
Sonic cannot breathe underwater. He drowns very easily. Eggman, surely you can use this.
There was a horror movie where the guy would put people in tanks and it would slowly fill up and drown them, but like it was a slow process. It had shower heads. I can't remember what it was called because I don't watch horror movies, and I saw like one scene of it and I'm like, what is this doing on my TV screen? But that stuck with me because I always seem to walk in on like the worst parts of horror movies.
You do have that trait.
It's just all the time. And it stayed with me. And so, yes, he could have done that to Sonic, put him in a tank.
Maybe we have to desensitize you to such horrible things.
No.
Until dawn?
No.
Why not?
No. I like to sleep soundly, thank you.
Well, you know who would sleep soundly? Dr. Eggman, if Sonic, that meddling hedgehog and his friends, like Big the Cat, would stop interfering with his schemes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he builds giant space stations that are basically a Death Star, but egg-shaped, called the Death Egg. And if that's not cool, I don't know what isn't.
Everything's got to rip off Star Wars at some point, doesn't it?
We've got Death Eggs, we've got Mecha Sonics, we've got Metal Sonics. They are different. Don't give me that look. Eggman has tricked Knuckles into helping him. He has recruited bounty hunters. He has unearthed generic snake demon things called what were they called? The Deadly Six. There are some pathetic villains. If we were talking about the other type of worst villains,
Like just poorly designed.
just terrible, what is this? This is not a villain. Sonic would probably win that one too.
Aw.
Why are we doing this podcast?
Is it making you
This
sad?
is just trauma.
Oh, we'll have to do a happier topic next week.
Yes.
Those are just the villains that we think that need a new day job. They're good characters for the most part, but obviously aren't very good at what they aspire to do, so maybe they need to see a guidance counsellor. Find a new path for them, I think.
Check the classifieds. Or,
Yeah.
go old school. Get the old job hunting newspaper out.
I don't know
with
if they
your
still have them. You could just
texter.
have to go online and put it up their resume. Go on LinkedIn.
I'm getting old. I said the classifieds.
You really did. Tell him he's dreaming.
Oh.
That's a reference to an Australian movie for those who have not seen The Castle. If you want to know a bit more about Australian culture, there you go. The Castle. Awesome Aussie movie. There are plenty of villains that do their job very well. I would love to do a podcast about that, of some of our favourite villains that are awesome, whether it's the character and how they're written or just because they win and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they just did that. And you sit there stunned.
The tricky thing with those sort of lists are they can be very spoiler heavy as well.
I want to know how people feel about that. Please comment, send us a message if you want some spoiler-ish episodes. We're happy to obviously put spoiler in the title, let you know if we're going to do spoiler talk. But if you want episodes where we cover things like that, it would be good for us to know if that is something that people would be interested in. Thegaminglovers.com, you can send us a message or you can hit us up on Facebook or Twitter and let us know what you think.
Don't spoil me with anything, though. I hate spoilers. You're not allowed to talk about anything that I have not played.
Don't tweet Brendo. You're welcome to tweet me, though. You can find me at just a link. All the links are on our website.
Or Brendo and Jem, because you run that.
Yes, I do. Or Facebook. All of the above.
All right. Well, another topic done and dusted. Let's move on to our future gaming goals.
Okay, so Cold Steel 2. Again. Yeah, that's pretty much for me.
Now, you seem pretty down on Cold Steel 2 this episode. Are you still enjoying the game?
I was until it hit me with this stupid annex story that it added for no good reason.
Maybe there is a good reason and you just haven't reached that point yet. Have you thought of that?
Maybe it'll make sense in the third because I know the third has already come out in Japan but it hasn't been localized yet.
Well, that will not be on your gaming goals then. What are you playing at the moment? You have beaten Captain Spirit?
Mm-hmm. This week, we actually have some guests staying with us. So because our next podcast is going to be about family-orientated games as well as some retro games that we're going to put to the test with these guys, I think I'm going to leave my gaming goals to do with the stuff that we do with them because we're going to be way too busy to really focus on much else. And I don't have the luxury of sitting on a train for a little bit to play some games.
Well, that's a good point. We do have quite a busy month coming up. We do have guests. There'll be some babysitting duties thrown in.
Yes.
And for those who are fans of New Japan Pro Wrestling like myself, the G1 Climax is around the corner and that'll eat up most of my month.
Mm-hmm.
However, I am thinking of making up for that. Every year in February, I do 4 in Feb.
Uh-huh.
Now, I was thinking, can I do that on any other months?
Mm-hmm.
And 4 in Feb just sounds so nice.
Because it rolls off the tongue, yes.
You can't do 4 in April.
No, you could find something else that rhymes with April.
Well, guess what? It's almost July. After that's out the way, it's going to be August.
August. Fair enough.
So we'll probably be a bit lighter on the gaming goal scale.
Mm-hmm.
I might take a friend or two to do a co-op run of a game here and there that I've wanted to tick off my checklist.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm going to keep it loosey-goosey for the time being.
You still need to, though, remember your gaming goal of working on the Yakuza series before we go to Japan. So
That'll go well while I'm babysitting. I'll show the child that's taking under my wing the dark crevices of the Japanese crime underworld.
Yes.
At least they won't hear the profanity because it's in Japanese.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, next week in the Gaming Lovers podcast, we're going to have some special guests join us, as we alluded to.
Are they special guests or are they just guests? We don't want to overhype them. They're just guests.
They're special. They're not regulars, so they're special guests. Any guest is a special guest, frankly. And we are going to put them to the test. We're going to introduce them to some of the games we played when we were kids.
That's right. I'm going to take them through a little trip through my memory lane and give them the crash course in video game history. Since they were all born on the other side of 2000, let's throw them back to the 80s, the 70s.
Yes, they're going to hate it.
What? No.
Trust me, if they crack it at the difficulty on games that are targeted at them now, they are not going to be able to handle games that send them back to the very beginning as soon as they die. They are going to crack the biggest ante. I want to put money down on that. I think it's like a guarantee that there's going to be some rage quits.
That breaks my nostalgic heart. But I'm actually looking forward to the reaction.
We might even record some of their sessions to include in the next podcast just so you can can get some reactions of the dummy spitting. I don't know if we're being nice by introducing them to these games or if we're actually torturing them. Bit of both. Bit of both.
That's fine.
Thanks for joining us. This has been Jem and Brendo for the Gaming Lovers Podcast.
Should I go and play Captain Spirit now while I've got some time?
Yeah, I would recommend you do that before our friends arrive.
All right, I'll hit that up. Thank you. Good night.
Bye,
Or morning.
Onara.
Or afternoon. I don't even know what time it is where you are. That was the chair.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.